Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on Arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. I hope you're having a better time than I've had this afternoon, because I spent some time putting together a garden table. Now, I will hold my hands up and say that I am a DIY amateur. Although amateur suggests there is some measure of competence there. But look, I can do basic things. And this table was fun. It's legs. It goes on the top bit, the table bit. You attach the legs and everything's hunky-dory, right? Except the legs were annoying to get on. You know, all these little screws that you had to get in and use a little Allen key to get them all the way in there. And then, because they weren't going in properly, some of the threads in the screws are going, so I had to use a little fucking, I don't even know the names of stuff, like a vice grips to try and get it in. And eventually, it all worked out. Got the top on the table, turned the table over, and went back into the shed to put some of the tools away, and also to calm down a little bit, because my incompetence frustrates me, because I know this is a simple task and I've made it difficult. So I get kind of angry and frustrated with myself. So I walked into the shed, put the tools back into the toolbox, turned around, went to walk out of the shed, and stood on a rake, which hit me in the face, which made me even more furious until I realized I had just sideshow bobbed myself. I'm a grown man. I'm an adult man in my 50s, and I literally sideshow bobbed myself. I'm hoping that this, is a good omen for the weekend, taking one for the team, because it was actually quite painful, and that this sacrifice I've made to my bottom lip, which is still a bit stingy, will be reflected in the scoreline after we take on Manchester City at the Etihad on Sunday. It is a very big game. Would I take a rake in the face? I'd take 4 or 5 rakes in the face. I promise you, I would take another 4 or 5 if you could guarantee me an Arsenal win. That's how much I really, really want us to win this game, and how much I feel we need to win this game as we look to continue our title chase and win our first Premier League in 20 years. So if more mishaps befall me this weekend and it results in, good performance and the right result for Arsenal, I'll take it. Just, nothing too serious, please, if that's okay. If that's all right. Okay. There is a lot to talk about. There is a lot to discuss. There is a lot to look forward to. So let's get on with today's show. And with me to do that, first, it's Andrew Allen. Hello, Andrew.
Hello there.
And we also have Lewis Ambrose. Hello, Lewis.
Good afternoon.
Just to sort of put this in context, Lewis and I would normally, for every Premier League fixture, do a preview podcast exclusively for our Patreon members. But I was trying to figure out how to do any kind of podcast whatsoever which didn't focus primarily on this game against Manchester City on Sunday, leaving room for a Patreon preview podcast, and couldn't think of it. So this is a sort of my way of telling our Patreon members that we're not going to have a specific preview podcast. If there's some dramatic stuff in Mikel Arteta's press conference, Lewis and I might reconvene tomorrow afternoon and have a little chat about that. But the prime focus of this particular episode is going to be a game that's going to be huge in the title race. How are you feeling about it, Lewis? A few hours, well, more than a few hours, a few days away from it. How is how are the brain and the heart processing what we've got to come?
The international break has been a nice little distraction, I guess. The ability to switch off and not pay too much attention to what's going on, or I thought at least, and then Kyle Walker hobbled off and I felt that little bit of optimism. And then John Stones did the same thing on, was it Tuesday night? And again, you're sort of thinking to yourself, are they actually injured? Are they not injured? Yeah, it's having so long between our last game and this one. I think it was in the distance for quite a while, and as this week has progressed, it's become harder and harder to think about anything else.
It is a bit all-encompassing, Andrew, isn't it? Because the magnitude of this fixture is maybe unlike anything we've experienced in the recent past. I know that we had this similar kind of scenario last season when we went to the Etihad and, we were looking for a result, but there were, it was a different Arsenal team. There were different circumstances. We knew we had injuries. We knew the team wasn't going to be as strong as we would like it to be. At this point, we don't know anything about team news, but, we'll wildly speculate about who he might pick nevertheless. But this one feels like a real, I hate to use the phrase Super Sunday, but it is that kind of gargantuan clash between two teams in a game which could realistically have a very, very significant impact on where the title ends up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously last year at the end of it did feel like it was the big dagger in the heart for us when we came out of that game. This time I kind of feel, there's still quite a lot of football to go, isn't there? And obviously with Liverpool in the mix as well, you sense that there's quite a few twists and turns ahead. But it is massive. My calendar kind of pings me a notification 48 hours exactly before a game starts, and I got it at 4:30, and my heart just went.
Your calendar's wrong because it's 72 hours, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's playing tricks on me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, that was very kind of it to give me an extra early 24 hours to worry about things. It's a massive game, isn't it? It feels like, as you say, we're coming into this with a different outfit. Like there's even though there are a few injury concerns, it does feel like there's the potential for us to put out near enough our first choice 11. And I feel like being able to go up there and play on equal terms with them just is something I've wanted us to be able to do for such a long time. Last year, it just really, you knew inside 5 minutes it was over. This year, I feel we have just that little bit more experience, that little bit more physicality, that little bit more gumption, I think, to actually approach the game section by section and try and take something from it.
Can we go into this one with more momentum, Lewis, even though we have obviously spent 2 weeks enduring an international break? When you look back at the fixtures that preceded the game against Manchester City last season, there was a Liverpool draw, a game, we were 2-0 up in and flying, and then all of a sudden it went mad and chaotic, and we ended up very thankful that we came away with a point. There was the West Ham game, which, again, you started so well, 2-0 up early on, and then let it slip. Saka missed that penalty. And then there was the 3-3 draw with Southampton. You give a goal away in the first 10 seconds or 20 seconds of that game, whatever it was, when Aaron Ramsdale, made that mistake and Southampton are a goal up. And, it felt like all of those things fed into the way that the Arsenal team was feeling going into the game at Manchester City last season, that maybe things had just caught up with us. The injuries, the pressure, the lack of experience, all of those things that were present and part of last season were very much in the forefront of our minds, maybe as fans, but also the team and the manager going into that game. This time around, we're on the back of a very good run in the Premier League. We've qualified for the knockout stages of the Champions League. The international break has gotten in the way a little bit of that momentum. But I think when the players come back and when they reconvene and, think about how they're going to approach this game, there shouldn't be any sort of lingering doubts from what's happened in the recent past. They should be able, fingers crossed, to sort of just say, okay, we've had that time off. Now, we go again. Let's pretend we were in Dubai and let's come back and do that shit again.
Yeah, I think definitely the mood is completely different. As Andrew said, there's such a long way to go. I think that Liverpool game last season, there were 9 games left when we played that one. So we were pretty much at the stage we're at now. And that Liverpool game was the start of us dropping points and that lead that we had sort of slipping away. Obviously, City had a game in hand as well, which played into it. But yeah, we went to the Etihad off the back of, like you said, Andrew, not just results that meant we'd drop points, but I think they were so disappointing. To go 2-0 up at Anfield and not win, to obviously go ahead against West Ham, and then the way that we went behind against Southampton, we dropped points in what felt like ridiculous ways and ways that we never should have dropped points in the first place. And then you go to the Etihad off the back of that run, and obviously with a few key players missing as well. And I think it had turned into very much by the time we actually turned up there a few weeks before. We were looking at this as this big 6-point title clash, and by the time we got to the Etihad, it was, well, Man City can basically win the league if they win tonight, and obviously not just the win, but the way that they won, the way that they beat us. As Andrew said, it was over within 5-10 minutes. The game ended very much with that feeling. I don't know how we'll feel come full time on Sunday. I don't think any result will have the whole world agreeing that the Premier League title race is done and dusted. I think it might look like a long way back on Sunday evening if we do lose, but it won't be over. And there is a lot of football left to be played. And as you said, we go into this with a wave of positivity. We go into this with mostly, and hopefully, fingers crossed, fully fit squad, and that opportunity to go to the Etihad and compete for the first time in a really, really long time. And we've been, the last few years, right, like we've been a goal down within 5-10 minutes. I think the last 2 years in a row, there was a goal within the first minute a few years before that. I had a look earlier today. 2016 is the last time we played at the league game at the Etihad and we weren't behind at half time. And I think that's for me, all I'm looking for this weekend is to compete. And we've ticked off everything else under Mikel Arteta. We've ended really long waits to win a league game at Stamford Bridge and at Old Trafford and at Tottenham. We're still waiting for Anfield, but we've gone there twice in a row and given them a really, really good game and taken a point away, and I think scared the life out of them in the process. We've beaten them twice in the meantime at home as well in the league the last 2 seasons. City they're the last one. They're the one left. Obviously, a win at Anfield in the near future would be lovely. But I think this is the last hurdle. We've got to the Champions League quarterfinals for the first time in well over a decade. This is the thing for Mikel Arteta to tick off that he hasn't yet ticked off in terms of our rivals and competing with teams and going to a certain place and getting not just performance but result as well. And a result could, I think everybody could agree that a point would be not a bad point at all on Sunday, as much as we'd all love to win. And yeah, I think last year we had the team to go there and get something from them, and injuries took that away from us and not out of our hands, but made it very, very difficult to go there and get anything. This year, hopefully, with most of them available, we've got the opportunity to go there and play them at eye level and go toe to toe like we've done at the Emirates against them the last few seasons.
Yeah, I mean, we won earlier this season at the Emirates. We beat them in the Community Shield, albeit via penalties. So there is something there, I think, for the team to work with, Andrew. But as a game in a title race, a title 6-pointer or a relegation 6-pointer, these head-to-heads can often be the difference between, who wins and who doesn't, particularly when it's so tight at the top. There's that famous one, isn't there, in the Liverpool-Man City game where the ball just about crossed the line but didn't, and that ends up being just so crucial in the way a title plays out. But I wonder if you were to pool the sort of opinions of many people, I think, a lot of them would say that Arsenal are probably third favourites or third in the list of who they think is going to win the league, because Liverpool have been there and they've done it, albeit in a COVID season. Man City are what they are and we know what they do. So the importance of this result, is obvious. 3 points for Arsenal on Sunday would be amazing. It doesn't mean we're going to go on and win the league because there's still so much to play. It might just give you a little bit of margin for error in the other games that are to come. But as a way of sort of demonstrating to everybody else and maybe to the team themselves, and also, maybe just put a little crack in the aura of Manchester City as well. I think there is something really important about being able to go to your biggest rival and win games. Arsenal won the league at Old Trafford, as you know. It was a tumultuous season. It was always a really, really difficult game to play, but Arsenal went there and did that. Those are kind of the credentials of a title-winning team. So above and beyond 3 points, is there maybe a little bit more at stake for Arsenal this season, as we continue to improve and progress, and hopefully, I don't want to say that you can halt the momentum of Manchester City because they are something of a juggernaut, but just maybe make them go, oh, fuck, there is someone else to really worry about here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Lewis said about Arteta sort of changing the narrative around the big games against the big six away from home is something we have to cling on to. I mean, I'd love nothing more than to see us go up to the Etihad, put in a proper performance and come away with 3 points. But, we do have to be realistic. I think they're 25 matches unbeaten at home, and that run stretches all the way back to November 2022.
Mm-hmm.
They've scored in every league game or something since October 2021 at the Etihad. So, as you say, they are a juggernaut. They are going to be very, very difficult to overcome. I do not think a draw is a bad result. It'll be a great result for Liverpool, who have got a couple of home games on the bounce and will be looking at the match as we did a couple of weeks ago when they played City and hoping for drop points for both teams. But I think if we could go and put in a solid performance and come away and feel like we did what we wanted, I would take a point. What I don't want to see is for us to go up there and just get completely outplayed, because I feel like more than anything, our ability to perform on the day is as big a marker almost as whether or not we take the points. If we can go up there and impose our game, play the football that we've been playing so well recently, have a team of players who look comfortable. I mean, we've got other big games ahead. We need to really come out of this unscathed with confidence intact, knowing Bayern away, knowing Manchester United away, knowing Tottenham away. All of those games have got a lot of potential to be tricky for us. So I think it's about coming through unscathed and keeping the confidence and keep things ticking over. The title isn't going to be decided tomorrow. It may look like that if we drop all 3 points. Potentially the stats guys will start doing their percentages and weighing up which games and all the rest of it. But I don't think it will be decided tomorrow. But I just want us to come out kind of relatively unscathed. I think a point would be very, very good. 3 points would be amazing. But at the same time, you could take 3 points and you can't get carried away because there's still so many more games to go.
Sure. How do you think Mikel Arteta will approach this one, Lewis? Because if you remember the Community Shield, it was almost comical the way that Arsenal allowed Man City to keep possession and have the ball. That classic Simpsons gif of the ball just pass in midfield. It was like that at times. And it was clear that the way Mikel Arteta approached that game was, okay, we're not going to be open. You're not going to exploit the space in behind. We're not going to leave ourselves vulnerable to the ball over the top, which we have done in the past, and found ourselves on the wrong end of City's quality in the final third. The game at the Emirates, it was a tight game, decided very late. It obviously changes how you feel about it. But so much of what Arteta has tried to do this season, I really think, is geared towards this final part of the season, where that first part was, the buzzword was control. It was about being defensively solid. I think Arsenal's numbers, if you have a look at them, they stack up incredibly well about chances allowed, shots on goal, all of those things. But it wasn't particularly exciting in that first part of the season. And then we were able to add that end product on top of what we have. And to me, that was the sort of the ingredients that he wanted to put together, because he knows that what you do in these final 9-10 games realistically is what's going to decide the title. I mean, you obviously have to get the results all the way through, but in order to get across the line first, you have to be able to combine the control with the end product. So in the early part of the season, there was much more emphasis on, well, let's stay solid. Now it's a bit more mixed. It feels to me like he is going to go and not play a conservative game per se, but he's going to play in a way which makes it, difficult for Manchester City to break us down, but also that might exploit some of the strengths or allow us to expose or exploit some of the weaknesses rather than Manchester City have, as we saw in the Liverpool game, the Manchester United game, the Manchester derby, where, had United been in any way on it in the final third, could have scored a number of goals in that game.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing because I don't think City are as good as previous seasons in terms of controlling and dominating a match and just keeping their opponents at arm's length entirely. I don't think they quite have that same level. I think there's obviously last year Haaland came in, and then that removes a player who's going to keep the ball because he's just getting on the end of things. And I think Foden is another player of that ilk who's in the final third trying to make things happen. Instead of keeping the game ticking over and playing 1,000 passes to push the opponent back and back and back. So you're just, when you do lose the ball, they're 80 yards from your goal. Well, obviously, Grealish was a massive part of that last season. He's been injured for a while. And I think Guardiola now has quite an interesting decision when he's got Haaland and Foden, who both have to play the way they've been playing recently. And then he's got De Bruyne as well, who's another one of those players. I think Sam Lee at The Athletics described Guardiola breaking his players into players who help you play well and players who win you the game. And he likes to have maybe 2 on the pitch who help you actually win the game, and the other 9 have to make the team play well. Well, I think in De Bruyne, Foden and Haaland, he probably has 3 who he kind of has to pick, who might win you the game, but don't necessarily help the team play well. And that's why, obviously, he took De Bruyne off when they were struggling at Anfield a few weeks ago. So I think there's a temptation to go at them because I think there is something more go-atable about City this season compared to previous years. However, I think Mikel Arteta will see it, and I think it's the way I would probably like us to approach it too. You can't win the game unless you stay in it in the first place. And we've gone behind there early so often. The game's out of our hands, by half time, by the 30-minute mark. And to me, this would be a very similar approach to the one that we saw in October at the Emirates. Be sensible. Don't be defensive. Still attack them. Still go at them when you have the opportunity. But don't take risks that could see us concede a goal or a huge chance, for the benefit of maybe pushing an extra player forward and stretching them at the other end. I thought Chelsea were really impressive in the first half at the Etihad a month or 2 ago as well. And I thought really the game plan from Chelsea that day was simple. It was we don't really engage City in their half, but when we win the ball anywhere near the halfway line, then we stream forward in numbers and the ball goes forward immediately. We all know that City are going to play with their defenders on the halfway line, that when there are the ball on the halfway line with Rodri or whoever, that it's only going to be 2 or 3 players behind him, and you've got all that space to run into. So for me, that will be the important thing when we're going forward, is to attack quickly when the opportunity is there to attack quickly. And then when the opportunity isn't there, when the space isn't there, put our foot on the ball and calm things down and slow it down. And it's about picking your moments, I think, in these games, staying in the game for as long as you can, and then picking your moments. I thought we were great in October in that you didn't get the impression we were desperate to win in the first half, but in the second half, I think you did a lot more. When we realised the game was there to be won, after we'd earned the right to win the game by keeping it tight, then it felt like we really put our foot down and went for it. And I would probably expect to see the same sort of approach. And I think the same sort of approach is probably your best chance of coming away from City with the points.
Yeah, Andrew, anything on that? I mean, it may well be a case that some of the game plan is dependent on who's available. So we're waiting on injury news about Bukayo Saka, who came away from England duty, Gabriel Martinelli, who ideally would start a game like this because he has the ability to stretch a defence in the way that maybe some of the other options there don't. Normally we would wait for the press conference to get an idea of, is there any team news? I think more than any other game this season, this will be one where Mikel Arteta's already close to his chest cards are played, even more so. He's going to super glue them to his tits, basically, and not give anything away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Big Gabby's another, potential injury doubt, isn't he? I mean, I as Lewis was saying, I think there's a real need to control our emotions in this game. The game doesn't need to be won in the first half. We've done fast starts before and struggled to hold on, as per Liverpool last season, West Ham. So I think it's almost a George Graham game, isn't it? Get through the first half, keep it tight, try and nick it in the second half, that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's on the player front, I really don't expect him to change things too much. I'm not seeing Arteta go galaxy brain on this and try and outthink Pep by trying something new. I think if he's got everybody that he wants fit, he probably plays the team that started the last game. Maybe, Martinelli might be in, he might not be out in, depending on that injury situation. But he's always a nice option to have off the bench, as he was in the first game earlier this season. So yeah, I'd expect us to have a very settled set of players, having not had much time to prepare for the game because of the internationals. There's a sense of keep the same guys doing the same stuff, basically. Keep the guys who are in form on the pitch, and we've got a lot of guys who are in form. Outside of that, yeah, I think, as I said before, just controlling the emotion of the game. Like, I think the crowd at City isn't always the loudest, but last year they made a hell of a racket against us. And, you remembered the way that Rob Holding tried to kind of plough into Haaland a couple of times. It was sort of immediately suggested that we were on edge and we wanted to kind of, try and win the game in a physical way that maybe we didn't need to. And this time, I think it's really just about keeping our heads. Yeah, as Lewis says, keep the ball, slow it down if we need to, and show the maturity that I think this team has shown for most of this season. Right? I mean, it's been growing and growing. We've got leaders all over the pitch. Physically, we look, like beasts these days. And do the simple things right. Get our set pieces right. Win the duels. It's going to come down to those sort of like the very, very basics, I think, and also not panicking when City have the ball for a long time, right? Like we kind of have to accept that's going to happen. It's a slightly different game scenario than we've been used to recently, but we know it's going to be difficult. We know it's going to be tough like that, and we need to have the out ball, I guess. And I mean, Havertz in the Community Shield sort of demonstrated that ability to hold up the ball all that time ago. And I think long diagonal balls out to him potentially at times is going to be an interesting one to look at. But yeah, I mean, I'm relatively positive. If we do what we've been doing, I think it'll be a tight game. If we lose our heads and just sort of do something stupid like get someone sent off, then who knows what the hell will happen. But, we've not done anything silly like that recently.
Yeah, I mean, the old Arteta versus Guardiola questions, I'm sure, will come up in the press conference, and we'll hear the same answers from both managers that we've heard every single fucking time that these two play against each other. But, do you think that narrative, Lewis, is beginning to change a little bit? The fact that Arteta has been able to win a couple of games against Guardiola, Community Shield and the one at the Emirates earlier this season, I think has slightly changed that. As long as he was looking for that first win, there was always the sort of head-to-head between these two guys. And it's always going to be the case. I think that's always going to be part of the story. I mean, it wasn't just Arteta who did things like that in the games that they played against each other, each manager trying to sort of outthink the other one. I remember Bernardo Silva playing at left back in one game, and it didn't go well at all. And then, they put Bernardo Silva in a position where, he can actually influence the game, and things changed around for Manchester City, which was, a little bit unfortunate. But, I sort of expected maybe more from Pep this time rather than Arteta.
Yeah, it'll be obviously the potential absentees sort of play into this as well. Like City, if Walker's not available, if Stones isn't available, then obviously your options are limited in terms of how much they actually do change things and mix it up. I think what Andrew said, to playing the same team that's been doing well, which is more or less the team that beat City earlier in the season as well. There was a bit of an odd front three that day with the injuries of Trossard, Jesus and Nketiah through the middle. But otherwise, it was with Zinchenko and Kivior's place, it was the same back four that we've seen recently. It was Jorginho and Rice in midfield with Odegaard. That's the team that's been playing recently. That's the team that beat Liverpool at the Emirates. So I think it will be the same. And I think less than the narrative around Guardiola and Arteta changing, I think it's about that changing in Arteta's head. And I think it's about just a bit more confidence in his own abilities and in his players as well. Before and the way he talks, and even the way he talks after we beat City in October, you see just the level of respect that Arteta has. I think we all see City as this complex, fantastic footballing machine. Mikel Arteta has obviously been on the inside and seen the cogs and where they go and how they were. So I can understand why that's why that has been daunting in the past, and maybe, you know, it works both ways. There's maybe he's felt a bit of pressure to be the one that cracks the code because he knows all the secrets. On the other hand, he knows the secrets, so he knows just how hard it is to figure out how to beat them. And he knows that when you feel like you've, you know, got them right where you want them, Pep changes something, and suddenly they're all over you again, because he's been the one sat next to Guardiola discussing what should we change to make sure that happens. So I think Arteta's needed a bit of time to work that out in his own head and grown his own confidence in his own game plan. And even after the win in October, he spoke about, you know, that they can do so many things. You know, the flick of a switch, they can change what they're doing. They'll try and force you out of position, and they'll do it in a completely different way moments later. And I think he knows that it's just so hard to prepare for Manchester City, because you can't prepare for all the possibilities, because they will do things that they maybe haven't done before. We saw it last season in this game, right? Where suddenly they go in long to Haaland, and De Bruyne is playing off him like a big man, little man combination. I can't think of Guardiola doing that before, and certainly not in sort of a title deciding match. But I think those defeats have sort of stilled Arteta a little bit to figure out what his own game plan is and not try and get involved in this chess match so much. And obviously there'll be little things that change during the course of the game, and whether it's, you know, a bit of a positional change or just going for it a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on what the score is or how the game's playing out. I think more than anything else, we need Arteta, and I think he's getting there, to sort of just have the belief in the way that he wants to set Arsenal up, regardless of what's out there in front of Arsenal. And I think we've seen that in this season, right? Like the Liverpool games, the City game in the league, not so much maybe the Community Shield. I think there's been a push from us in these really big matches to kind of be what Porto were to us, just stubborn and hard to break down and organised and a nuisance. And it's worked really, really well at the Emirates against Liverpool and against City. Now it's time to road test it before the reason I think that most people would have us as the third favourites for the title is that this one's obviously coming up, but then we've got, you know, Bayern away in the Champions League and a whole host of horrible league fixtures away from home that we have to play before now and the end of the season as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of that road testing, you know, this team. But, you know, it's kind of what you have to do, and you have to, you know, rise to the challenges as the season goes on. In terms of the team, you know, it's very early, but we are speculating. I can't see any change, Andrew, to the back four. Zinchenko wasn't fit enough to start a really important game in midweek for Ukraine. He came on midway through the second half. So to me, that basically rules him out of this one. Not that I would have been terribly inclined to start him in this game anyway. You know, even if he did start in the game at the Emirates that we won and played an important role that day. But I think the fact even that Kivior did 120 minutes in midweek, you know, he's not a guy, for example, who is going to be really tired because he's played a huge amount. Like, he's only played regularly for the last couple of months. He's got a lot left in his tank. So in terms of that back four, it's very difficult to see anything changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he did bring in Zinchenko for whatever reason, it kind of forces him to maybe then double think what his midfield is, right? He might then start to think, well, I'll take Jorginho out and we'll sort of shuffle things around. And I just, at this point, I just don't see it. Also, Zinchenko's calf muscles I just don't trust them at this point. And, you know, it feels like maybe if we did have to chase the game in the second half and, you know, put him on, he'd be an option, you know, someone who's got that creativity to unpick a pass or pick a lock. I definitely don't see it really changing. I think, you know, there's a Trossard-Martinelli decision up front potentially. I see Havertz starting over Jesus. Which is amazing, really, when you think about it, that we've come this far into the season and we're saying that Jesus and Zinchenko, even though they're basically fit, are now people who we can afford to have on the bench. It's kind of mind-blowing to me that we've managed to mature and evolve like that over the course of this season. I don't know that Arteta himself necessarily saw things playing out that way. It feels like he bought a load of ingredients and started making something, and it's not necessarily what he intended to make, but he's found a new way of getting to the end point, along the way. So, yeah, I think it's just so hard to say, isn't it, without knowing how the players report back to London Colney today and what their physical status is. Anyone could have picked up the most minor of little things that we haven't heard about just yet, and it maybe throws a spanner in the works. But keep doing what we're doing. Keep dominating the ball. Stay tight. Do our set pieces the way we do our set pieces. Yeah, I think that's basically it. I mean, I don't see players like Doku, who might be a particular, a dribbling challenge, necessarily starting for City. Someone who would go up against, Kivior or White.
Ben White, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily see them throwing that in from the start either. So I'm not sure we have to kind of double think that either. I just hope that we've got, as I said right at the beginning, I hope we've got the players that we wanted in the lineup so that we can go, play them on our own terms. How do you think or feel about these players dropping out of international duty or not being able to play? Like, do you think
the City players?
Well, both sides really. I mean, do you think we were playing games, or do you think it was? I mean, with the Brazilians in particular, it feels like we made very early decisions with them. Well, with Big Gabby, we made an early decision.
Yeah, I have to say I'm slightly concerned because. I think these particular internationals are the ones where managers will play some games about players. Famously, Alex Ferguson did it time and time again, and maybe it's part of what you've got to do. Like the Saka one worries me, I have to say, because he's a guy who always plays, and he's a guy who is always played for England and for Arsenal. It might be a question of common sense, but I'm not 100% sure that's top of the list when it comes to Gareth Southgate and the way that he manages his squad and manages his players during these international breaks. The City players, I wouldn't be surprised to see all of them available, to be honest. I don't know if they were playing games. I suspect both of them, Walker and Stones, if they felt anything at all, they were under instruction to not take any risk whatsoever and to go down and to go off. I think that was probably the instruction that they went away with on international duty. So it might be a case they felt a little bit of a niggle and could be back. I expect every City player to be fit. I have concerns about, Arsenal players being fit. But that's just sort of the fatalistic outlook I have before a game like this, because it would be typical. Nevertheless, we played Man City earlier in the season without Bukayo Saka and won the game. So we have demonstrated an ability to cope. But it would be nice to go in with into a game like this with everybody more or less fully fit. There's always going to be a few issues here and there. So we'll probably not know until the team is announced on Sunday, or if there are any leaks. But Lewis, Andrew mentioned a Trossard Martinelli decision, which may well be the case. We don't know what the extent of Martinelli's recovery is. The injury, from what we understand, was actually really bad. Very bad cut on his foot, which can take time to heal, and you don't want to take any risks, particularly, as you've said, there are lots of other difficult games to play in Champions League and domestically as well. So you've got to be a little bit risk averse regardless of how important this fixture is. But I wonder as well, is it maybe a Martinelli, Trossard, Jesus decision? Because I think Havertz will start up front, as Andrew said. But maybe there's an argument, and we had this discussion maybe ahead of the last game or one of the games that we were previewing, where Jesus as an option, as a wide player, as we have seen a couple of times this season, is one that you can lean into. Probably not what Arteta was expecting, but it's there, and the experience he has at that stadium, in the Premier League, in big games, and playing wide. Trossard has a nice ability to deliver things. I just wonder if, you're confident in Jesus' ability to get through 90 minutes, if he just might be a better option on that left-hand side than Trossard for this particular fixture.
Yeah, I did wonder if you were going to throw his name in the mix for that position. I think it's... I think it says a lot that at City, he used to play a lot of the big games. And I think that says a lot about him, and that he can be trusted, to work hard, to positionally, to be in the right place defensively, to not let the team down. I think there's, to an extent, and the way we've talked about how do you approach this game, and you approach it by saying, let's not lose it, let's not throw it, or let's not lose it by throwing it away first. There's a lot to be said for players who will do their job first before talking about, whether or not they can influence things and win you the match in the final third. And Jesus, probably more than Trossard as well, gives us a little bit of a one-on-one threat. A threat on the counter-attack, but also when we're pressing, I think Trossard, if he's missing one thing, is just that burst of pace, that first 5-10 yards. I think when we're pressing too, you'll see Martinelli, he's just so rapid that we can almost cheat and give him two jobs at once, and he'll position himself sort of equidistant between, the right back and the right midfielder, and it will allow our left back to sort of go walkabouts into the centre and close somebody else down, because Martinelli can do the two jobs in one go. And Trossard, I think we do have to dial the press back a bit with him instead of Martinelli on the wing, because he doesn't have that burst of pace, that acceleration that Jesus probably, not as much as Martinelli, but has a degree of. So I think, in that sense, he makes sense. And offensively, I think it would make plenty of sense as well. Again, we don't know how fit he is. This is the start of this crazy run, right? Every midweek we're playing now. I think there's a little bit of a gap between, is it Aston Villa before Aston Villa. There's a Bayern Munich and Aston Villa. There's sort of 5 days, but from now, starting on Sunday, it's 4 games in 10 days with City, Luton, Brighton, and then Bayern Munich. So if Jesus is ready to start a game, and it means that somebody else can start, or it means against Luton in midweek, or if it means he's sort of getting those minutes in his legs, ready to not just start, but maybe complete a game by the time Brighton and Bayern come around, I think that has to be considered as well. I think you do have to talk about managing the minutes and managing the squad. As much as Mikel Arteta will put out a team that he thinks is the best team to beat Manchester City, I think it's, you're sort of asking for trouble if you're going to run out the same 11 game after game at this point. There are going to have to be sensible changes, and Jesus is a player who I think, as maybe battling with Trossard right now, if Havertz is considered a centre forward as sort of the fourth choice forward for that front three, means there are going to be a hell of a lot of minutes that Gabriel Jesus is going to have to play over the next while. And he's not sharp, he's not match ready, because he hasn't played much football for a while. So I think he's a player that it'll be valuable for us longer term to get more minutes in his legs as well over the course of this whole run-in. Without diminishing his quality, he's still a player that can play and have a really big impact. It's not like you're choosing a lesser player, I don't think, if he plays. And like you say, he started on the wing earlier in the season. Actually, in this game, he was the one who played on the right with Bukayo Saka out, and combined quite nicely with Ben White that day, and posed City a few questions down that right-hand side, which is something that Saka's struggled to do up against Nathan Ake at times. I think Ake was a centre-back that day, but still, they're not the easiest backline to cause problems for. And as he knows these big occasions, these big games. He knows the City players, and he's still got something to prove. He's not really performed since against them. He's not had the opportunity to since joining us last season. So, there's something a little bit extra there for him. I think in the same vein, I wanted to ask the two of you, maybe Jesus is an extra option out wide, but we're all agreeing that we'd like to stick with the same back four. But what if Gabriel isn't fit? What do we do? Who does Mikel Arteta turn to? Like, is Tomiyasu ready to play from the start, or what happens? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I mean, look, there is no other option at right back. Ben White has to stay at right back. Therefore, William Saliba has to stay at right-sided centre-back. You could move Kivior over and play Tomiyasu at left-back, or Zinchenko at left-back are your other options. But Tomiyasu plays left-sided centre-half for Japan and plays there very well. If he was capable of playing 90 minutes, that would be the option that I would go for. maybe if he can only even play 60 or 70 minutes, you have the option of moving Kivior into the centre and bringing Zinchenko on for the last 20 minutes. I mean, it would be far from ideal, obviously, because he hasn't played a huge amount. All we can hope is that since coming back from the Asian Cup, not playing and having this time to recover and recuperate, he is, fit, if not match fit, and ready to go. I don't know, Andrew, if there are any other options that we could turn to in that context.
Not unless we kind of do what we did right at the beginning of the season, decide that Ben White can go in the middle and we'll play Thomas Partey down the right back.
Well, there's another one. Like, can he come in and play right back the way you need to play right back with Jakub Kivior at left back? Absolutely not. I don't think so.
No. No, I mean, basically, I think you said everything I could possibly say on the matter.
Right.
Yeah, it's Kivior at left centre back with Tomiyasu outside, or the other way round with Kivior keeping left back and Tomiyasu inside. I still don't know if I trust Zinchenko's legs at this point, but again, obviously, he is a fine option to have at left back. Yeah, I mean, I hope we don't have to make that decision. It would be a real shame not to have Gabby and Willie go up against Haaland and deny him a shot on target for a third game in a row.
That would be nice. That would be nice. And, the importance of that partnership, I think, is a huge reason as to why this season is going as well as it is. And just sticking with you, Andrew, I've seen a lot of Rice versus Rodri articles start to appear in the news feeds, which I understand because they're similar sorts of players. Their importance to their respective midfields is unquestioned. Rice with just the 180 minutes over the course of the international break. So thank you very much indeed, Mr. Southgate. Rodri only played 90 minutes for Spain during the international break, but he did play the full game in their 3-3 draw with Brazil during the week. So he has relatively new minutes under his belt. But I think the comparisons are interesting because they may well play very different roles on Sunday. If Arsenal start Jorginho in midfield, which I think they will, he started the game earlier in the season, and I don't see any reason as to why he won't start this particular game now, because the other options, if you do play Rice further back, then there are question marks about all the options that we have there for a game of this importance. And I think the experience that Jorginho has will be something Mikel Arteta leans into. So the direct comparison you could make, as two players who play as six, but I think Rice is going to play a bit further forward and is probably going to be a bit more in Rodri's space than he would be if he was playing a little bit deeper. So we might actually get something of not a head-to-head clash, but these two guys are going to be in close combat, if you like, if that's the way the team's set up.
Yeah, it's mouth-watering, isn't it, really? I mean, we knew Declan Rice was a very, very good player when we signed him. And even though it took him a little bit of time just to figure out maybe what Arteta was asking from him, he's just thrived, hasn't he? I mean, it's quite something now to have a sort of England captain in the middle of the Arsenal midfield. I think, yeah, as you said, I mean, he's kind of going to be sharing the burden a little bit with Jorginho in this game, I suspect. And the two of them have done really well, like in tandem, kind of mopping up the space and making sure that the press is implemented when needed, but also taking turns in who's on the ball, one moving it quicker, the other deciding to carry a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, the thing with, Rodri is, he's almost taken on this kind of mythical presence, hasn't he? Because, City have this incredible record when he plays. I can't remember exactly what it is. When
they never lose.
62 games unbeaten now.
Right.
Yeah. So the moment you see him on the team sheet, you suddenly start to think, oh God, this is going to be an impossible task. But, we've seen these types of things before, hasn't it? Was it Ian Rush? Whenever Ian Rush scored, Liverpool used to win, and then Arsenal beat them in the League Cup final in whenever it was, 88.
Oh, Charlie Nicholas, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we could park maybe some of that, but we should have a plan. We should have a plan for him because I mean, the one thing we know is that Rodri is going to be in the team. There's no real question marks over that. Arteta will have been looking at it for a long, long time. Am I right in thinking he missed the game at the Emirates?
Yeah,
he was suspended. Yeah, for a red card he got against.
So it is
Bournemouth, maybe
Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
So it is something extra that we have to, I guess, consider. I don't know. What do you guys think,
Lewis?
I mean, well, he's good, isn't he?
He's very good.
You know, where we've got that Rice and Jorginho, I guess he's sort of a bit of both. Defensively, Rice, but Rice with a pinch of Jorginho's legs and not quite that superhuman ability Rice has to cover ground the way that he does. And I think, I don't think we'll be nicking the ball off him too often and running at their back four because Rodri's given it away. But I do think when we do win the ball, it's in the pockets either side of Rodri where there's the opportunity to get going.
So he's not going to be the trigger for the press. It's when he delivers the ball to somebody else that's the trigger for the press.
Yeah, for sure. But like I said, Chelsea really, he was in the team that day. He was in the team at Anfield a few weeks ago as well. And Liverpool and Chelsea had no shortage of chances. Like you say, Andrew, it's become sort of mythical. Rodri plays means City don't lose, but well, until they do. And there's plenty of games that he played that, well, not plenty because it's Manchester City, but he did play in games that they lost before this run started, and there'll be games again at some point. And there have been games along the way that they've maybe got away with a little bit. I think the most annoying thing about that aura that he has around him right now is that he's not just this excellent holding midfielder, but he's started last season popping up with last minute winners and the like whenever they've needed them most as well, frustratingly.
Bit like Declan Rice.
Yeah, a little bit. I think, Rodri is asked to do like Busquets was for Guardiola before, and there probably wasn't quite the level of player in that position during his time at Bayern Munich. Obviously there was Fernandinho, but with much more support from the fullbacks in midfield in his early days at Manchester City. I think if you go back to Busquets, the job they're asked to do is enormous in these teams. You've got everybody piling forward and keeping the ball, but when it all breaks down, it's sort of a couple of centre-backs and him, and that's it, defending against everybody coming forward. And I think that's, where City have obviously gone with Kyle Walker and Nathan Ake and the incredible pace the pair of them have over the last couple of years to protect that area a little bit more. But there are spaces either side of Rodri when you win the ball if you get it forward quickly enough. I think there's an opportunity there. As good as Rodri is, because he's so good, they burden him with so much that he has to be perfect. And most weeks he is, but there will be times that like any player that he isn't. I think if they defend the way that we do with that sort of 4-4-2 pressing as well, if you can just tempt Rodri out into pressing, there were a couple of moments against Liverpool at Anfield where Liverpool are building up, this same sort of couple of centre-backs, the goalkeeper and the two sort of more defensive midfielders, the exact way that we'll have Jorginho and Declan Rice in there on Sunday. And as that sort of 4-4-2, it was Rodri's job alongside whoever his partner was at the time, Kovacic maybe, to just press onto those central midfielders, press onto Endo and whoever else it was. And Queven Kelleher a couple of times for Liverpool that day just clipped the ball over the top and into that gap between the City centre-halves and midfielders, the sort of gap that Rodri had vacated. And, as Andrew mentioned earlier, that's where we've got Kai Havertz at the moment, who wins plenty. And if Kai Havertz is there, competing for balls, knocking them down or forcing City players into loose touches as they're trying to win those long balls forward, well, as fantastic as Rodri is, I'd fancy Gabriel Martinelli and Declan Rice in a race with him to win that second ball and launch a counter-attack. So I think there are opportunities there, like there are with any team. I think Rodri's, as good a shout as anyone's probably ever had from that position to be heralded as maybe the best or most important player in world football at the moment or over the past 12 months. But I think, because he's so good, City burden him with so much that he can become exposed because of the enormity of the task that he's handed.
Yeah, Andrew, just sort of not moving on from that, but just part of that when Lewis talks about the opportunities we might have, somebody we haven't mentioned is Martin Odegaard, whose influence on this Arsenal team is obvious to everybody who watches it on a weekly basis. You look at the numbers, the passes, the creativity. I think, I'm not going to say he's been done dirty by some of his teammates, but when you look at the chances he creates and when you look at the passes he makes into the box and how influential he is, it feels to me anyway like he should have more assists to his name, because that's what people ultimately will judge your creativity and your influence on a team by, if you're that kind of player. Clearly, if Arsenal are to win this game, it is going to be a collective effort, and you could make the argument, I think, for nearly every player on that pitch to be, well, that guy's our most important, or that guy, it just depends where the ball is at that moment in time. But for me, I think if Arsenal are going to take 3 points in this game, there is not a big onus, but I think if Martin Odegaard plays well, Arsenal have the best chance of winning this game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously last time out, I think he produced the best assist we've had all season with that pass to Trossard in the Porto game. I think that really just kind of underlined how much of a match winner he can be when he's really, really on it. I mean, we've seen it growing bit by bit, but he's just a wonderful player to watch. And I know we were talking about Rodri. I mean, Odegaard and Rodri have a little bit of history, don't they? Rodri put one on Odegaard in the international match a while back, which nearly caused a very serious injury. And
yeah,
I'm absolutely, I 100% think if Odegaard carries the team in the way that he has done recently, then this game is there. It's definitely there for us to take. I mean, he just finds such wonderful little pockets of space these days, and everyone seems to be so attuned to him now. I think maybe it wasn't quite there at the beginning of the season with Havertz and Odegaard. Havertz and Odegaard and Rice. I think they were kind of feeling each other out. I think, because Odegaard had such an incredible relationship with Thomas Partey, knowing that the ball was going to come to him quite early. It took him a little bit of time to get used to maybe Declan Rice carrying the ball a couple of steps before making passes. So they've kind of moved him around the pitch a little bit as well. And when he was on loan, I looked at him and there were a couple of performances, the West Ham game in particular, when he came back from 3-0 down, and I thought, this guy has got it. And I'm just so proud that he's in our team. Like, everything that his whole aura, the way he carries himself, and now the fact that he's delivering the goods, the fact that he's taking us into a Champions League quarter-final as well. I don't really feel like he had much of a kick the last time we went to the Etihad. We were all over the shop. So I think he knows that this is a stage where he owes us a big performance. And I think you're right. I mean, we could have been more clinical this season at times, where he's got us into so many great situations. He's also been, a great executor of the pre-assist. He's always around the great moves that we put together. And he deserves a little bit more. It's funny because, this time last year, him and Saka were very much in the sort of shout and the talk for player of the season behind Haaland, who was always going to win it. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I don't think Odegaard, as you say, is necessarily going to be in that conversation, because the headline numbers are nowhere near what Saka's are this year, which is interesting, because I think you talk to any Arsenal fans and it's probably a much closer level between the two of them's performances.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, Andrew, because as soon as when Andrew mentioned that Rice Rodri thing earlier, and I sort of caught myself thinking, I think it's not really a competition, that Declan Rice is probably the best player in the Premier League this season. And then you started talking about Martin Odegaard, and I'm thinking to myself, is Declan Rice even the best player at Arsenal this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think his influence is growing, and I think his position as a leader and his attitude and the way that he leads this team. We've talked about it before, Lewis, as Mikel Arteta's tactical eyes and ears on the pitch. We've had examples of that, and I think the way he understands the game tactically dovetails perfectly with, he feels like a perfect Mikel Arteta player. Brilliantly creative, lots of flair, works his arse off, but understands the game. Super intelligent guy on the pitch as well. And I think when you think about the game at the Emirates, they tried to kick him out of that game. the Kovacic foul that went through the back of him, which I think had an impact on him for the following weeks, because he then went on international duty maybe and got the injury or got the kick from Rodri, and there was all that brouhaha and everything else. I could be mixing up seasons here. I'm not sure, but I know that earlier in the season that red card that Kovacic got away with, it's no coincidence, I don't think, that it's Martin Odegaard he went through the back of. I know that might sound cynical and everything else, but I think if you have an opportunity to do the opposition's best player, if you're that kind of guy, if you've got those kinds of instructions from Pep Guardiola, and make no mistake, that's something he would absolutely sanction, because that's kind of what you've got to do at this level. They tried to kick him out of that game. Thankfully, we went on and won it, but I think he is going to be a big influence in this one as well.
Yeah, I think anytime, as Andrew said, anytime we play well, and if Martin Odegaard does play well on Sunday, then I think that Arsenal have had a good game and have competed and given us at least as good as they've got from City. He's that. He ties everything together, doesn't he? He's that orchestrator in the middle of the pitch. I don't think we've had a player, and especially when you combine it with that work rate, I don't think we've had a player like this in the middle of the pitch since Cesc left, who can just do everything and at a level above how anyone else can do anything, and that's exactly what he is. Like you say, Andrew, the combination is, we've obviously had players with quality, in midfield. Mesut Ozil comes to mind as that left-footed creative player. We've had players with incredible quality and matched with work rate in Alexis Sanchez maybe, but to combine the two with the tactical intelligence, and it is Martin Odegaard is that guy on the pitch for us, and it's one of those things, I think, when you see it, you can't unsee it. He's not only that, but he's also more than maybe people imagine for a creative player in the middle of the pitch, and he's a little bit slight compared to some of our other players, but he's the one who whips the crowd up when things need a little bit of a push at the Emirates. He's the one who's, at goal kicks or corners, waving his arms around to the clock end, to the North Bank, to get people on their feet and get them behind the team. And yeah, we've talked about it before. There's, when you watch Arsenal press, and especially at the Emirates, but away from home too, Martin Odegaard almost shepherds the rest of the players into position, and his right arm will be out constantly, and he'll be flicking his hand forward when he wants Saka to move on 5 yards, and he'll flick it back again when he thinks, no, it's not worth it, or we should cover a different position. And he's orchestrating and dictating that entire press. And as much as you maybe think a game like this might be decided more by a Declan Rice in those big spaces, and when Arsenal can break and get into space, we couldn't do what we do without Martin Odegaard. Even I think on an off day on the ball, or a game that doesn't quite suit him as much, the way that he sets the tone from the front with that press when we sort of shift into that 4-4-2, and it'll be him and Havertz at the top of it. He's the one that sort of pushes the ball into areas that the opposition can't hurt us or can hurt us much less in. And yeah, in every phase of the game, he's just absolutely crucial to everything we do. Just
sort of finally, and I'm going to let you guys go now in a second. When Andrew mentioned that assist in the Porto game, I was just sort of reminded of Bergkamp to Ljungberg, that ability to unlock a defense with one pass and just provide a moment of high quality which can win you a game. And I'm not saying that's not something we've had, but I think we've got somebody who can deliver that on a consistent basis. And when other teams are aware of what that guy can do, it does impact the way they play against you, and it does impact the way they set up against you. And for too long, I think City just assumed this was a 3-point game for them because, well, it was a 3-point game for them, and I'm not sure it is anymore, and I hope it's not on Sunday. And we'll hope that Mikel Arteta can get the ingredients right and serve us up a delicious Easter Sunday dinner. So we'll leave it there. Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Here's to Sunday.
Here's to Sunday. And Lewis, as ever, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you very much indeed to Andrew. You can find him on Twitter. He is at @ALlenSport, and Lewis is also on Twitter at LG Ambrose. Okay, well, we have talked as much as we possibly can about this enormous game on Sunday. Now we just have to, wait for this enormous game on Sunday. What do we do to pass the time? How do you keep your mind off it all weekend? It's going to be a challenge. Like I said at the start, if there is something extraordinary from Mikel Arteta's press conference, Lewis and I will get together again and record something for our Patreon members. You can join us over on Patreon, patreon.com/Arseblog. James and I, of course, will be around on Monday, despite the fact this is a bank holiday weekend. It's Easter weekend, so happy Easter to all those of you who Easter. But James and I will be here to pour over whatever happens at the Etihad on Monday in an Arsecast Extra. Let's hope it is as good as we all want it to be, and we can go from there and, lean into this one game at a time thing that we're going to have to deal with. It's going to get busy. It's going to get hectic. We're going to have lots of content, lots of podcasts, lots of previews, lots of Arsecasts and Arsecast Extra. So strap in, buckle up, and let's hope that this ride towards the end of the season is as smooth as it possibly can be. I expect there might be a few bumps on the road as well, which is why, you should put your seatbelt on and stuff. Okay, don't go too crazy between now and 4:30 on Sunday. Thank you so much as ever for listening. Really appreciate it as always. For now, take it easy and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're just going to test the levels. If you wouldn't mind, just start counting, and I'll tell you when.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. We got enough?
A bit more, please. Keep going there.
Okay, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54... 99, 100. Is that it?
Just a little more, please. Just getting it exactly right here.
101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115.
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, man. That's exactly it.